sorry. Yep, thanks. So yeah, hello everyone. So I'm so excited to have Brett to join us for this webinar. And basically, I learned so much from Brett in the past 2 years. So I met Brett online actually, and I watched one of his talks he gave, and where he talked about effort score, self-service, and so many interesting things. So I decided to reach out, and ever since we've been in touch with Brett, and I've been learning a lot. So thanks, Brett, for teaching me and our team and joining us today for this webinar. Super excited to have you.
Really welcome, Chyngyz, and it's been a really fun 2 years, and I've learned a lot from you and Norman Ross and team around the technology side of what we do here in customer service, and it's been a really good, really great partnership so far. So I'm really excited to be part of this. This is actually one of the very first conversations we talked about, was at some point getting together and doing a webinar. So I'm really happy this is coming to fruition, and a great topic that we've got today about how to create that impetus to move from being that contact center into a value center for your organization.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this topic as well. And yeah, by way of introduction, so I'm Chyngyz. I'm a co-founder and CEO at Kodif. At Kodif, we are enabling non-technical CX teams with contextual data, automations, and AI. I mean, who is not AI today, right? So, so super excited to have Brett. And Brett, for those who don't know you, can you please maybe introduce yourself and share your background? I know that you've been in support for so many years, and would love to maybe get some nuggets here and there about your extensive customer support experience.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Yeah, you make me sound really old when you say I've been doing this for so many years.
So, I didn't mean that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I have been in customer service and support and customer experience engagement for about 25, 26 years now. A portion of that in the middle there, I did spend some time in organizational development in the HR side of the business, which really helped with this aspect of human connection and service, because the employee experience is such an impactful portion of the customer experience, and really spending some time investing in learning and knowing more about that and connections with people working, I think, has just expanded on that capability. My background started off in technology and customer service for Microsoft, and really dating myself, my first product that I helped support was Windows 95. So that in itself ages me. But it went on from Microsoft, had a great opportunity to head out to Asia Pacific, and one of the other people who's on the webinar today, who's actually the co-founder of the 5As that we're talking to, John Ho, and I spent some time helping to create the Asia Pacific customer service organization for Microsoft. That spun on some time at Adobe out in Asia Pacific, and it was with Adobe that I came back to the US and did some work in the organizational development space. I just spent a little bit of time on provider side with a company called Sutherland. And then for 2016 through 2022, I led the customer service organization for Sunbasket, which is a premium meal kit delivery company. And that's where Chyngyz and team and I got connected as we were working on creating great self-service for customers and identifying those right opportunities to really put empowerment in customers' hands.
Yeah, super helpful, I think, very impressive. And maybe can you please talk about what you're doing now, and in terms of, like, I know you're doing some great work about pushing this 5As framework, helping more companies to provide excellent customer support experience, right? So maybe you can quickly share what you're up to.
So that comes into two places. So the first is about a year and a half ago, John and I created Service Matters LLC. And it was a company that basically we created around the 5As framework, and in the process of creating a book. My hope is to get get that out here this year and get more of this information out into the public's hand. But in line with that, at the start of this year, I joined Arise and their customer engagement consulting services. And so 5 is one of the different offerings that we provide. And we've got a wide range of bespoke services to help with customer engagements from startups to enterprise, helping to really solve a number of the key questions that customer experience leaders are facing today, from this topic that we're talking about today of transitioning from a cost center into a value center for startup companies. How do I create? Or how do I do more with less? How do I look for those opportunities to find savings to be able to invest in that experience and a number of elements?
Yeah, this is super awesome. Very cool. So, Brett, one of the things, I've been in support for, more than 2 years now, but every time I hear this words like, oh, you don't treat your customer support as a cost center. But there are no tactical things. And this is why I'm so excited about the 5-phase framework, because, there's so many people who talk about don't do this, don't do that, but there's no tactical guidance on how to do this, how to turn your customer support center from a cost center to a value or revenue generating center. So this is why I think I'm so excited about this framework, and would love to get some maybe insight into how you come to this framework with John, and maybe if you can talk about what did you see was missing, and
Absolutely. So I think one of the things that John and I have seen across our time in the industry is kind of a pulling back from what we truly see is the full service and the connection and human connection. And so one of the things that we really identified, and I've got to be honest, I was kind of part of this at Microsoft in the early days, and many organizations, there was this focus on how do you reduce the time, the wasted time, and just get into making these contacts run as quickly as possible. There's time and motion studies that occurred, etc. And in that space, what we found was a lot of the connection elements of a contact was stripped away. And we ended up with most organizations focusing on one, sometimes 2 A's, and these A's are in our framework. 1A is assist. And the reality is, yes, we're here to assist, but that's not the full picture. And so that element of assist, and then sometimes if an organization had an upsell or a cross-sell goal, then they were going to go ahead and ask and trying to get something back out of the customer. And the reality is, from the outcome perspectives, those are 2 absolute outcomes that we're looking for. Most organizations focus on resolution. And if you're an organization that has some kind of a revenue element, be it a retention or a cross-sell or an upsell, you're looking for those positive retention or revenue outcomes. And so it's easy to kind of understand how this focus on we're here to assist the customer and sometimes ask the customer happen. That ends up in this experience, and I'm sure many of you who are on the call listening today or who watch this afterwards have been in this situation yourself as a customer. You've got a problem. I'll pick on the airline industry because our president's picking on the airline industry at the moment, so they're a common one. But I've had this with an airline industry recently. I had a problem with a flight that I needed to get changed an address, and so somebody answered the phone. We'll just say it's John. John answered the phone and says, "Hi Brett, how can I help you?" And that's a common script. It's always in there. That's that promise of help. And then as a consumer, we tell them our problem. We tell them what's going on, what the impact is, sometimes even how we want that to be resolved. And then the response 8 times out of 10 that we're going to get back is, "Okay, Brett, can I have your email address, please? Or can I have your account number, please?" There's no recognition of that, what you've just told them. And 2 things generally happen at that point. One is you begrudgingly give them that information, and in your mind, you're thinking, okay, this is going to be as hard as I thought it was going to be. And you distance yourself further away from the company person. It becomes a fight. Or what we've quite often commonly seen is I'll turn around and say, "Well, wait a minute, John, you didn't understand me. and I'll repeat myself and I'll talk over again. Now, that whole element of kind of getting directly to that ask of, can I get your email address or can I get your account number, is because that's logically the next best thing that an agent may need in order to help get to where they need to be. The problem is we're not logical beings, we're emotional beings, especially when we've got something that's frustrating us or a problem that's going on. And so this approach of just really focusing on what's the most logical next best thing, that someone sat down in a journey flow and said, if someone tells you this, the next logical thing is that, really ignores that emotional state. And so as John and I were sitting down and looking to create a successful customer engagement model for a company that we were partnering on, we really stripped back and said, what do we need to do in order to get to these positive outcomes, in order to get to the position that we can give satisfactory resolutions, and that we can start then being able to drive value for our customers, as well as take value back into the organization of the company. And that's really where the genesis of the 5 A's of successful customer engagement.
Yeah. I think that it would be a great segue now to maybe go deeper into 5 A's, like just to understand. I know 5 A's framework, but I'd love to maybe if you can share, which each A means. And I agree. And we as a company, we started, you remember, right? And you taught us this, that we started from focusing on 1A, which is assist, basically just, and we have an agent assist tool. But now we're just think it's more than this, like especially if you're trying to move your support from not only just serving your customers reactively, but also being more proactive. I think 5 A's would be a great framework to adopt. I think, Brett, do you want to maybe?
Sure. Let me share my screen here, and I'll take through. Promise won't be a huge amount of detail here, but it's really going to help enable an understanding what it is. So the 5 A's of successful engagement really starts with that first part of the element of, once you've heard that that explanation from the customer, it's that active acknowledgement. And that acknowledgement really is that first step to address the emotional connection that the customer is looking for when they're coming in. When a customer tells us their problem, they tell us what's happened, they want to feel acknowledged. They want to have someone believe that it's a problem to them, right? So when we look at acknowledgement, John and I really look at, there's a number of things that come into it, but there's a few basic things we think about and teach and have put in the places that we've implemented this. It's acknowledging the customer as who they are as a customer for you, acknowledging who they are as a customer, where they are in their journey and their relationship with you, acknowledging the problem and that it's a problem to them, right? And acknowledging the impact that it's had. Now, acknowledgement isn't two things. Acknowledgement isn't saying sorry, even if you can be, you may not, because sometimes sorry doesn't cut it. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for that, I've understood that you have a problem and this problem is having an impact, and it's a negative impact on you. That element of acknowledging where they are in their life cycle, right? If I know that you're a new customer and you hear that, or you explain that, or just because I know where you are from the information that's coming through my CRM, and I say, Chyngyz, as a new customer, I can totally understand that this experience is not what you were looking for when you signed up for our service, right? Now you're acknowledging them as a customer, where they are in their journey. You then can acknowledge that impact that they have. And that's that element of first trying to bring that emotional state down, and that's what's needed in order to really start moving into that logic space. So the next day after acknowledge is alignment. And that alignment is really how you bring together, and what we're looking for on that aspect is, when people come into a contact these days, they're expecting bad service. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality. Most people, over 75% of people, if you look at the last Salesforce survey, come into a contact expecting less than stellar experience. So the opportunity here is to really be able to bring yourself into alignment with the customer. And there's a few ways you're doing that. The first is, if they've given you in the explanation of the how can I help you, or a solution that they're looking for, you want to address that at this point before you get to the actual assist. And that's important for two reasons. If you can do what they've asked for, by acknowledging that and saying, and John, I heard that you wanted a refund today. I can absolutely help you with a refund. right? Then that cortisol level is going to come down. Then they feel, oh, this person's with me. It's now not me against you and the problem. It's now me and you against the problem.
Mm-hmm.
If what they've told you is a solution that they're looking for that you can't do, then that's the best place to address that as well. Now, John, I know you said that you wanted a refund. That may not be something I can do at this point, but I do believe I have 2 or 3 other options that can get to your outcome. When I understood your outcome is you want to be able to use your money again as quickly as possible. And I've got a couple of ways we can get there. Let's look at that together, right? That act of acknowledging and then aligning on what's possible is kind of pre-selling your ability to get to the assist. So once you've done those 2 things, you've acknowledged and then you're aligned, you're in that point that you can come now into that ability to assist them, right? And that's what we're here for. We're here to get to that assist. The act of doing those 2 things up front puts them in a much more willing space to be able to then have the conversation, to be open to either, yes, he's told me he can do, or she's told me that she can do the thing that I want, or she understands what I want. She's taken that to potentially the ultimate outcome. So they may say a refund, but the outcome is I want to use that money again. And so if the outcome, and you can readdress and align that on the actual outcome they're looking for, then you've got many more paths that you can get as far as an assistance in the solution. And the more willing they are to be able to accept that solution. And so you asked a little bit about some of the metrics. We'll get to that a little bit later. But one of the things that I found in this when we put this into place at Sunbasket was we didn't change when we first put this any of the solutions that we were offering customers. But by doing these first 2 steps before getting to the assist step, the acknowledge and align, we increased our resolution perception by 10%. So it was just the approach and the how and the acknowledging and the redirecting and aligning to the ultimate outcome increased without ever changing the types of resolutions. Now we ended up, based on that, adding some more solutions later that we got a higher level of resolution from. But just that acknowledgement and alignment and bringing people together gave us a significant result in impression of resolution, not a change in what the actual options were. So if a company stops there, then they're a good cost center, right? If you acknowledge well, if you align well, and then you assist, you can be a great cost center. But we think that there's an opportunity when you stop at that point, you leave value on the table. Now, there's companies who still want you to go forward and have like an upsell or cross-sell at that point. If you go straight into asking for that upsell or cross-sell, you're missing a step. And the reality there, and this is where it becomes difficult, if you've got agents who you've hired to be great customer service people, the reality is many of them aren't great salespeople, because those 2 skill sets don't always come together. You find those unicorns, those great people who have both sometimes, but your great customer service people are often going to be hesitant to ask for that sale because it kind of goes against a little bit of that nature sometimes. And so in this situation, the reality is you've assisted a customer with a problem and the mindset that your company created in one way or another to begin with. So you haven't really given them any value. You've solved a problem that you created in the first place. And then you turn around and asking for value from them. And that's why we get companies that get very, very low success rates in those asks. And so what John and I really looked at, and this was the missing step, was how do you provide value to your company or to that customer? And that's through the step of adding advice or being an advisor. And in this advice capacity, this is something that can happen pretty much on every single interaction. In this advice capacity, what you're looking for is, based on what I know about this customer, based on what I know on where they are in their journey, on the issue that they've potentially just given to me and I've helped them with, what's something that I can provide of value to them that they didn't expect when they picked up the phone today? And it doesn't have to be a lot, right? It could be an element that also has benefit, and this is sometimes where the first value back to the company can happen, is if that advice is something that prevents a future issue from occurring. Hey, John, from my experience in talking with customers like yourself, about 50% of customers who have this problem sometimes go on to experience that problem. And so I'd like to give you some information here so you don't have that problem again in the future, or you don't run into that situation as well. Now that's beneficial to John. He wasn't expecting that because he didn't know that that might happen. He's now says, oh, hey, this person is giving me something I wasn't looking for. They're helping me avoid an issue in the future. That's great for them. Also great for us as the company, because that means I'm not going to get that call in the future. The cost of support totally for that customer comes down. There's other elements of advice, and again, it really is organization specific or customer specific. At Sunbasket, for instance, we knew customers who, if they were going out of town, we would give them advice up front of how you could skip out their meals well in advance. If a customer had problems sometimes of forgetting to skip a meal and they got a payment for a week that they weren't expecting, we gave some certain ideas around how they could better manage their ordering process. Like, for instance, if we knew there was a family, one of our agents would say, well, for instance, one of the great ways that some of our customers have been able to manage their subscription is they set Tuesday night as their Sunbasket menu night. And so at dinner, they also bring up and they go through and they figure out. And that way, if it's always every Tuesday night you're looking, then you're not going to be there. Then it's a routine, right? And it helps people to do something that prevents a problem in the future. So that advice stage is something that you can give, and pretty much every organization will have things of value or things of information, advice that they can give on any contact that's relevant to that customer based on where they are in their life cycle, the products they have, services they're using, et cetera, et cetera. So that portion there of giving advice is what sets up reciprocity. And reciprocity is that portion that's missing quite often before you go into the ask. And that reciprocity is what's going to help the ask to be more successful. Now, it doesn't guarantee you do these four A's initially to begin with. It's always going to be successful in the ask. I wish I could guarantee that, but I can't. But it does significantly increase the likelihood of that happening if the customer is going to be open to it. Now, there's a couple of things with the ask. Yes, you're setting up reciprocity, and that's all good, but it's also a situational element. You don't want to put and force your agent who's just built this relationship, built this trust, built this type of a connection with their customer. If they truly didn't give them a great solution up front, you can still give advice, but you probably should skip the ask at that point, right? Unless it's an ask that makes sense in the situation they're in. Mm-hmm. Now, the other element with the ask, and this is where we talk about moving from a cost center to a value center rather than a cost center to a profit center, is because when you think about the ask, revenue is one of those things. But John and I, as we looked through this, we really identified that there are 4 key types of asks that bring value back into the organization. So if you're doing a retention, you're asking that customer to stay, that's kind of a direct revenue. If you've got a, hey, would you like to buy this service? That's a direct revenue. Those have definite value and those are great. Those are measurable. Those are definitely key things that you can look and put measures in place to look at the percentage of time that the question is asked, the percentage of time when it's asked that you're getting a positive result, the amount of money you're getting, the average upsell, cross-sell, et cetera, et cetera. Those are really solid and measurable and can help put into that piece. There's other portions of information that or action that are valuable back to the organization. And this is where building a partnership with your marketing team, with your sales team, with your product team, with your operations team, and really looking at them, what are they going out and spending money on today to get information or to get value back from their customers that you can tap into in these contacts that you've already invested into that are now a cost to your organization. And so there's other 3 things that we identified are an ask for information. And that could be your marketing team is wanting to know something about a new campaign or something they're looking to do in the future. Hey, we're thinking of doing this or that. What do you think customers would be more interested in? Right? Great way at the end of it. Hey, John, just before I let you go, our marketing team's really interested in opinions of folks just like you. Would you have a quick second to answer a question about X? Right? And then you set up in your CRM your ability to record that answer about X. So information, it could be your product team, your product team is building a new functionality in the app, and they want feedback from customers. So rather than going out and creating a totally other stream of trying to harvest from different places, you can harvest those. And this is one thing we did at Sunbasket as well. Our product team saved a lot of time, money, and energy by coming to us at customer service to go out and find customers who are willing to come in and spend a 30-minute session with them, being able to look at new features and functionality and give feedback. So that information, or the next one is an action. It could be an element of an action you'd like your customer to take. It could be an action of downloading an app. If you know that your customers are X amount stickier if they're using your app versus your web version, that ask of, and that also could be something, if you know that your customers are more sticky and more successful, that could be part of the advice. Hey, we know that our customers actually have a better experience if they use our app. I notice you haven't downloaded it. Is that something I can help take you through today? That can be a combination of advice and ask in one activity. So another ask could be for a review, right? Yeah. Really appreciate the experience. You know, I heard, you know, when we talked that you like this element about it. Sorry that you ran into this, and I'm glad we're able to take that today. But I'd really appreciate it if you were to go out and leave a review about your experience. We appreciate customers who give us honest, full reviews of what's happened, right? And so there's multiple different things that you could be asking your customer to do as far as an action. The third one is just an ask to create awareness that may not be looking for a specific action now, but it's to plant a seed for future harvesting with that customer. And that's another one that we use quite often with our marketing team of, hey, by the way, did you know that we are X? Or did you know that we also sell Y? It's not a go out and buy Y. It's not a, hey, would you like to buy it now? But it's creating awareness. And those create future value. So that ask capacity really is where value can come, that you can potentially come in, and you know, customer service leaders see a huge amount of value and information. You can come to one of your internal leaders and you can give them an example. Hey, I'd love to be able to bring you this type of insight. If I could bring this insight to you, would it be valuable? Right? And then if they say, oh, I'm not really interested in that, it's like, well, what else are you looking for today? What else are you going on and spending money on? Or what would you like to know from your customer? And so this helps to create a stronger bond with the rest of your organization and increases that perception of value of the customer service organization. So I know we talked a little bit about overall metrics and capabilities. And so when you look at all 5 A's together, really looked at a number of key performance indicators that we've seen specific impact on. Satisfaction, that acknowledgement, that connection, that human emotional connection is really the underpinning of creating a more satisfactory experience. That alignment up front of really that, hey, yes, this is what we can do to help, is one of the elements that really reduces the effort that the customer has to take once they've got in touch with you and that portion of effort related to the contact. Doing those two things to create a higher likelihood of them accepting the solutions you have has that impact on SCR, as we talked about. That advice really creates that long-term stickiness and trust of you that we're there to help, and that helps with retention. And then the asks bring revenue and value. The one thing that I know that John would absolutely want to make sure that I cover off here, and I do as well, is this isn't just a benefit to the customer, it's a huge benefit to the agent as well. This has a really significant impact on agent satisfaction. Because it provides the agents with a framework to feel comfortable in moving through a conversation with a customer in a way that they now believe that they can have a strong connection with the customer. And when it comes to that ability or that need to ask, that they feel that they've earned the right to be able to ask because they've created that reciprocity with that advice portion. The 2 companies that we were both a part of and put it in and internally, we saw significant positive feedback from agents. John from a fintech company that he was working in saw great feedback from the agents as far as them being able to say that they now had a framework. They've really now felt comfortable in getting to that ask at the end of the conversation. Same thing when I spoke with agents at Sunbasket, they really looked at this as a way to be able to create a flow that felt really comfortable for them And in many respects, we were able to, we never really were a heavy script company beforehand, but it provided them more of a framework to use that they could naturally bring their own language into, versus feeling they had to have a very solid script working along the contact. And just kind of some examples. A couple of these I can talk to, some I can't. There are NDAs under the companies that we worked with, but you see here some of those impacts that adopting the 5A principles have been able to have with companies that we've worked with. The reduced 500,000, 19 annualized cost. I can say that was at Sunbasket. I looked at the total amount, and when we put this into place and all the things that were related to it, it was both contact avoidance, reducing. We were actually able to increase our contacts per hour with this model. And that's one of the things that in talk people I've had is like, well, doesn't this add a whole bunch of extra time and create more time? But the reality is, like, by spending those little bits of time up front with the acknowledge and align, you prevent a lot of that back and forth conversation. You become in alignment to begin with. And those, you get rid of the, hey, wait a minute, you didn't hear me, and re-explanation. The increased or reduced annualized agent attrition, that was also from Sunbasket. The increased first contact resolution, that wasn't ours, but that was another great one we saw. Like I said, ours was 10% just by putting this in place. But across the board, we believe this has great value for the agents, for the customers, and back into the organization, the company, the leaders.
Yeah. This is awesome, Brett. I think to your point about this, I think when first saw this, I was like, does it increase the amount of time agents going to spend? And I remember when you explained this to me, I was like, yeah, it kind of makes sense, because it's kind of going slow, right? To make sure that you fully understood the problem customers are trying to solve, to resolve this in the most efficient manner. It's basically going slow to go fast, right, in the future. So let's open up this for Q&A. I think thanks for the presentation, Brett. I think it was great. In the meantime, I have a question. So on something you touched, but I would love to kind of dig a bit deeper. It's the effort score, the customer effort score. So people, I know you're a huge fan of the score, just like us. I remember lots of companies, spend a lot of resources and time to track NPS and CSAT. And I remember you were like very upfront that customer effort score is one of the most important scores for you. Can you kind of explain why and how? What? And also another thing which you say and said it a while ago is like, I guess like providing this extremely like customers like kind of overrate. It's I think going beyond expectations of customers is kind of overrated. I think that's a very interesting statement. I'd love to maybe kind of if you could mention those things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll talk a little bit about that. So customer satisfaction has obviously been a metric that's been around a very long time. And that was for a long time the primary metric that I used at Sunbasket. And we were really proud of our customer satisfaction score. We had got our customer satisfaction score up into the 90s. And I was working with Get Feedback at the time. We'd brought them on as our provider. And I'd also been reading a book called The Effortless Experience, which if you haven't seen it, I'd highly recommend it. And I'd heard a little bit about this customer effort score, and it made sense to some of the things I'd talked about. I just had never got around to kind of putting it in place because customer effort score or customer satisfaction was the number. But I got challenged when I was at a town hall. It's like, well, if you believe in it, why aren't you measuring? I'm like, well, I've got no excuse. Why don't I just go out and figure it out? So the next week I put it in place. That's one of the things you can do when you're in charge. I added it. So we asked customer satisfaction and then we asked customer effort. And I tracked them both side by side for 18 months. And consistently, our customer effort score was 10 to 12% lower than our customer satisfaction score. So what that taught me was we were missing things. We were over-evaluating our level of service and experience for our customer by just focusing on satisfaction. If we had just focused on satisfaction and said, oh, we're in a great low 90s, we're great, we don't need to do much more, right? Diminishing return on investment, we probably wouldn't have identified so many things that we're able to unlock that help our customers to be able to have a better overall experience by asking that question around their effort. And so when we put the customer effort score in place, we started with telling them, well, this is what our mission is. Our mission is to provide quick and hassle-free service in a way that our customers like you feel valued. Overall, how easy did we make it for you to get a solution today? And then if they gave us a low effort score, which is anything lower than a 6, we apologize. We're really sorry to hear that it was more effort than you expected. Can you share what may have contributed to that? And we'd identified through looking at surveys what we had expected those questions to be, or those answers to be, and we gave them some categories, and then we gave them a verbatim. And customers could select multiple different reasons for that. And that effort score really allowed us to look at the end-to-end element from finding the contact number in the first place through to the follow-up after the contact, and really identify places that we could drive that up. And so we actually got to a point after a vendor transition that our effort score dropped down into the high 60s, low 70s. And then over 3 years, we had a continuous improvement quarter after quarter after quarter, and moved that up to 87%. So if it would still be measuring on customer sat, we probably never would have found all those things. We may have dipped down and gone back up again. So I know we're close on time. The other two things, if you want to look into it really quickly, I think NPS has its place in certain areas. Depends on the product and the industry. Because I think that one of the things I think of, especially if you're in a high cost or more of a luxury type of a product, when you're asking about friends or family or things like that, you're taking the customers out of their thought of themselves and their relationship to your product. And you're having to get them think about the financial situation of their friends and family. One of the things I found at Sunbasket was a good chunk of the 7s and 8s were, I'm not sure if my friends could afford this. And that's really what you're looking for when you're trying to get an element of their experience of your targeted customer. Because if you're targeting a niche of affordability, then that's what you want. Is you want to understand their experience at their level, not wanting to judge. And so that's where I think NPS has some flaws. The other piece is around customer satisfaction and that element to always look to over deliver. Right now, I talked about that advice portion of giving more than someone expected, but that's value to them. The aspect of trying to wow your customer every time with things that aren't very valuable, that's where it becomes really, to me, a defeatist, because once you've wowed them with something, then that becomes their baseline expectation. And then you have to create something else to wow them again. And that becomes their new baseline expectation. And you have to wow them again. And the cost to do that with the return is just, it becomes a very difficult situation. You put your agents, your customer service team, and your budget for very little actual revenue impact back to the company.
Yeah, with that, Brett, I think we're pretty much close to the end. Where do people can find you, I think?
So you can find me on LinkedIn, Brett Frazer with a Z, or bfrazer@arise.com.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Brett, for joining us. And thanks everyone who attended. And I guess, there's a question. What is challenging part when you influence others in the company?
Challenging part, influencing others in the company. I think the challenge here is, how do you bring and show the value that this can bring back into your organization? I think this is probably looking at that ask portion, right? And the way that I would do this is, don't wait for permission. Try something out. Just do that element in the ask portion. And if you know that something that's that the company's focused on, right? As a leader, you should all have access to what the OKRs or the big goals are, or things that they're looking at. Just put something into place where you can ask that question, right? If it's an informational ask, and capture that result and bring it back to one of your leaders and say, hey, I know this is important to the company. Over the past 2 months, or past 3 weeks, or whatever that period is, we've been asking customers this information, and this is what they've told us. This is the type of information we could be bringing you on a regular basis. Would this be valuable to you? right? Because I think sometimes if you go in, you ask for permission, then there's the hesitancy and I don't know if this will work but if you go and do it and bring it and can show it to them, then that can break down the barrier. That was the first one I did. I went out in that element other than, and I just created one. I said, I believe this is going to work. Let me do this and bring it back. And we ended up with a number of different campaigns. And at the end, we're on a monthly basis. They were coming to me and saying, hey, can you do this for us? Hey, we're interested in finding this out. We've got all the information we need about that. Can we swap over to this now?
Yep. Cool. Thanks. I guess there are no more questions. So, Brett, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, and enjoy the rest of your day. And have a good day, everyone who could attend today. And I think the recording will be published soon as well. I think you can just see it on our LinkedIn page. And yeah, so follow us on social media as well. Thanks, everyone. Brett, cheers. Thank you.